Mm-hmm. 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 So look, man, I was gonna wait to post this, but I decided, nah. I was gonna wait and do it in my home studio with the books in the background and all of that stuff, right? But I figured, nah, we're not gonna do that. Because I was intrigued by this video that I was watching this morning. All right. So let's talk about this video. All right. So recently, I think yesterday actually, Ruslan posted, I saw this on Twitter. Ruslan posted a picture of him and Adam 22 from very popular YouTube channel No Jumper and another guy named Destiny in the photo. I guess Destiny is a is a contributor to this show, to the podcast. So Ruslan's on the show, and I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So I'm watching this portion. I watched the portion where Ruslan is on. And let me say a couple things. One, I think Ruslan, see, a lot of people come at Ruslan, right? I think Ruslan is a homie and he stands for Christian truth. And one of the things I appreciate about what he did on the podcast was he turned it on the people to defend what they to almost defend their unbelief rather than him having to keep defending why he believes. I thought that was brilliant. I don't think a lot of Christians use that rhetorical device like why are we always having to defend what we believe? Fam, defend your unbelief, right? But he did it in a really clever way to say, hey, let me ask you, what would you say? How would you defend it? So, but there's a point in this interview. It starts off right at the beginning after Ruslan kind of shares some of his story. They ask Adam 22, who's the host of No Jumper. He goes to Destiny, your thoughts. Now, this guy, Destiny, has, I think, a Catholic background, he said, but he's an atheist, right? And he's giving some thoughts, and I want us to watch this for maybe about a minute. And then he says something about the resurrection that I think is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Not because he's dumb, but just the logic of it. And you'll explain why in a second. All right. So we're gonna watch it. Now you know I'm low budget. I'm the low budget OG, right? So I'm not putting no split screen. We're gonna do it like this. But here is Ruslan with Adam 22, Destiny, and another guy named Lush 1. All right, here we go. Let's watch this. Listen, this is Destiny talking.
What if we were in the year 50,000? Would you still feel the same?
Yes,
What if it was the year 500,000?
I would still feel the same.
Okay, I feel like it's been a long time since Jesus died.
Yeah, it's been a long time, 2,000 years.
I feel like people thought he was going to come back a little quicker.
His disciples definitely thought it was going to happen quicker. Yeah, that's fair.
What if the sun blows up
What if?
and he's still not here?
What if?
I feel like trying to base my whole life around a contested historical event 2,000 years ago is not the way to go.
I mean, you got to define contested. Like, how do you contest it?
As in, there's not widespread agreement that there was a resurrection that took place. I'm not even sure if there's 100% agreement on the tomb being empty or not. But I mean, we can think of a lot of reasons why a tomb would be empty. It doesn't involve a guy coming back from the dead. But
So what would they do? What they do with the body?
damn, I don't know. They could have done a lot of things. So you'd have to ask the guys that hid it.
So they hid the body, and then all his blood brother, all of a sudden starts believing is God. I don't know.
Were they doing DNA tests back then? I don't know what blood.
I mean,
brother-
James is the brother of Jesus. He was one of the early apostles. You know, he's one of the early guys that was around. He was not a follower and a disciple during his lifetime. We can talk about Paul if you want to talk about Paul. Paul is a guy that was.
All I'm saying is that, like, I
figure.
understand that, like, we have, like, these historical figures, but I'm just saying that, like,
I'm referencing secular history, by the way. I haven't
Sure.
even cited. The
I'm
New
just
Testament.
saying it's been a long time.
Sure.
I don't see God doing much today. I know miracles were a lot more common before, like, the iPhone came out and people could start recording shit.
Okay. So let's talk about this for a second, right? Now, he said this as a passing comment. I think Ruslan did a masterful job working. If you get a chance to watch it, some profanity and stuff in it. These guys are unbelievers. Ruslan did a masterful job in this. But he made a comment about the resurrection, and here's what he said. I'm paraphrasing, but you just heard it if you're watching. He said, well, you have to ask the guys who hid it, right? They may have hid the body. Ruslan said they hid the body, and it was like, well, I don't know. I wasn't. So that is a common assumption for people who disagree with the resurrection, that the disciples may have hid the body and such and such. Now, Here's why I think that is one of the dumbest things you could say about the resurrection. All right. Let's assume for a moment, right? Let's assume for a moment that that you are not a Christian. You do not believe in the Bible. None of that, right? You don't have to believe in any of this, right? You're not a Christian. You don't believe in any of this stuff. Let's assume that that's the case, all right? Here's the reality for what we're talking about. If you see the Bible as simply just a work of literature, like if you don't believe in any of it, and you just believe the Bible's a real literature work of art. It's been the number one bestseller every year since they've been counting bestsellers. So at the very least, it is a widely read and widely purchased book. All right. You don't have to be a believer. With that being said, just if you understand literature, there's no way you can legitimately say the disciples may have taken the body and hid it. All right. So again, this isn't even I'm not even defending this as a Christian. This is just, all right, let's prove this for a second. All right. Let's this is crazy to me. Let's read some verses. All right. Let's go to, I'm going to use the Bible, but I'm going to show you why. Even if you just see it as a literary work of art, you cannot walk away with thinking that the disciples hid the body, took the body, right? All right, let's start here. All right, Matthew 16:21. Here's what it says. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem to suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. All right? So here, Peter, in this scene, does not understand the reality of Jesus having to die. All right? Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. You can be a non-Christian, and just from reading passages of the Bible, it becomes clear that the disciples in no way, shape, or form could have taken the Bible and hid it. What a stupid argument just based on reading the Bible. Okay, so that's first. Let's go here. I'm telling you, this is going to be crazy. Watch this. Let's go to Matthew 27, all right? Matthew 27, and let's go here beginning in verse 62, right? This is what it says in Matthew 7. It says this, right? So this is after the resurrection. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, Sir, we remember how that impostor said, while he was still alive, after 3 days I will rise. Therefore, order the tomb to be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people, He has risen from the dead, and the last fraud will be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, You have a guard of soldiers. Go make it as secure as you can. So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. All right. So right now you have what we first read, Matthew 16. Peter and the disciples, they're not even comprehending the necessity of Jesus' death, right? Now, and I would say in a moment, we're going to see they're not even comprehending the reality of the resurrection. But these guys did, right? These guys said to Pilate, Hey, that dude said he's going to come back from the dead. Let's secure the tomb. So they put a soldier there. Listen, these aren't like sucker soldiers, right? The apostles, Jesus' disciples, are fishermen. These dudes are Bamas for real. These dudes aren't. Peter cut off Malchus's ear with a sword. That's because Jesus was standing right there, right? These dudes are not soldiers, man. They're not Barabbas, right? So do you get the enemy sets up a soldier to make sure secures it, so the disciples would have to overpower the soldiers, remove the tomb that is heavily secured for this to work, right? So let's say with me though, that's not even the main thing, right? Let's go to chapter Matthew 28, right? This is just reading the Bible. This is just reading it. I'm telling you, this is going to be crazy. All right. Listen to this. Matthew 28, beginning in verse 11, right? Let's read 11 to 17. While they were going, behold, the story is Jesus rose from the dead, met them at the mountain, and the mountain said, Come, right? So while they're going, behold, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests all that had taken place. And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to soldiers and said, "Tell people his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So they took the money and did what was directed. And this story has been spread among the Jews to this day, right? Then it says this in verse 16. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted, right? So here we have, right? We have this narrative where even after the resurrection, let's call it resurrection, right? I'm going to put in quotation for it now because apparently the disciples stole the body. Even after the resurrection, you had some people still doubting. So the genuineness of this narrative is that people after the resurrection still doubted whether or not. Okay, so let's make sure we know where we're at right now. So if the disciples hid the body, they would have to, one, have the courage to overpower the Roman soldier, right? To remove the stone, lie about it, take the body and lie about it, right? And then to Ruslan's narrative, they would have to lie and say that they believe that he was risen from the dead, all right? So we looked at a couple passages, but we see that some disciples doubted even after the resurrection, right? All right, let's close it out with these couple passages. I'm telling you, this is how you know it's the enemy, because even if you don't believe in the Bible, just reading it as a literary device makes sense. Okay, let's read this. Luke 24, 10 through 12. Let's start here. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Right? That Jesus was risen from the dead. He came back. But Peter rose and ran to the tomb, stopping and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what happened, right? Okay, that's that. And then you go to Luke 13, and that's a long narrative. And listen to what they say. This is what it says. That very day, two of them were going to the village of Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and they were talking with each other about all the things that had happened. This is the kicker right here. This is it. This is the kicker. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What is this conversation you were holding with each other as you walked?" Listen to what they said. And they stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in the last day, in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified. But listen to this, but we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel," right? So you got two disciples who do not understand that the resurrection is a fundamental part of the redemption. They thought when he died, that was it. And then Jesus, if you know the story, he opens their eyes and it says he walked them through the law and the prophets, all the things concerning himself. And then he vanishes, right? And then you get this verse. And lastly, this is the last verse we're going to look at, John 20. All right. Again, this is just reading the Bible. This is just reading the Bible. Listen to this. John 19. On the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being locked where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." All right. So let's reconstruct the narrative. Jesus dies, right? The disciples are hiding. Why? Because they're in fear of the Jews. They're in fear of the Jews. The disciples are hiding. This is what it says. They're afraid that they're going to die. In fact, Peter was the last disciple to run away. And remember they said, "You were with them." And he said, "No, I wasn't." And then he took off and joined the other disciples. We see here in John 20:19 that they're in fear of the Jews. They thought they're going to come find us, kill us, and take us, right? So those guys, that happens. Mary, Joanna, and another Mary show up and say, "Jesus is alive." They're like, "Yeah, right. You're tripping right now. You high, you smoking something, right?" Peter and John run and then see this, and then this story develops. And then we see in Luke 24, you got two disciples who don't even realize the resurrection is important. Okay, why did I just say all of this? Why did I say that? Because here's the thing. The disciples could not have stolen the body to claim that Jesus rose from the dead because they didn't even understand that the resurrection was supposed to happen. They were afraid, they were hiding. Their confidence came after Jesus resurrected. So these men who were afraid of being kidnapped, who were afraid of being tortured and dying like Jesus, all of a sudden decided to overpower the Roman, remove the stone, right? Remove the stone, and then tell this narrative. Like, even from the story of the Bible, these guys did not understand, one, that Jesus had to die, which is why Peter, he rebuked him. He was like, Peter, get behind me, Satan. Two, they had no concept of the resurrection. The two disciples in Luke were like, man, we thought he was the dude. They're walking away from Jerusalem disappointed because they thought Jesus was the Messiah, but he's dead. They had no concept of the resurrection. So, how do people who have no concept of the resurrection, who don't understand what it is, and who are afraid of being captured, all of a sudden get the courage to, in 3 days, mind you, right? Friday, Saturday, and by Sunday morning, they've gathered the confidence because they all of a sudden just understand what the resurrection is about. And they know, oh, we have to go steal his body. Otherwise, there's no way. These dudes had no idea. In fact, we see in Matthew 28, when they came to worship him on the mountain in the Galilee, it says some doubted. So even after seeing Jesus resurrected, some doubted. It wasn't until Pentecost where they got it. Oh, that's when the Spirit came, and then it hit everybody, and then boom, now they got it. Now let's talk. Now let's have a conversation about Acts 2. Now we can preach this. Fam, these dudes were terrified. They had no understanding of what actually happened and what it meant until Acts chapter 2. So these dudes just intuitively thought, oh, we need to, in 2 days of being afraid. Listen, you don't have to be a Christian. Even if you just read the Bible as literature, there's no way that that can happen. That all of a sudden, dudes who were afraid on Friday evening, hiding, are now all of a sudden bold and come up with a plot when they don't even want to be seen in public. The little girl told Peter, you are one of them. He took off. Peter was gone. He was gone. All of a sudden, those dudes got the courage to overpower the soldiers, move the stone, take the body, and then spread the story that Jesus resurrected. They didn't even understand what the resurrection meant, fam. So again, this is just, what do I know? I'm an idiot. I think you guys should watch that interview. If nothing else, Ruslan did a masterful job putting it back on them to defend their unbelief while maintaining confidence in his. But you realize this couldn't have happened. This is nonsensical, fam. These dudes didn't understand the resurrection until the Spirit came in Acts 2. They didn't know what was going on. Some of them didn't even believe even after he resurrected. But they made it up. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. What do I know? Anyway, y'all enjoy the rest of your day. I probably might jump back out here again. But I thought this was just comedy to me to have this happen. All right. Kirk Kennedy, signing off.